Hello again. In the last video, we created the battery pickup and we put one in the level, we added some art to it, and we got it to bounce around and work over the network. So in this video, we're going to start working on the spawn volumes, which will actually create and spawn these pickups for us and drop them into the level. This is going to take a few videos so that we can define where things spawn in this video. In the next one, we'll do what to spawn. And then in the third from now, we'll do when to spawn. But the question is going to be, what about networking? This process is following just along the same track as Epic's development. So if you've already done this in their tutorial, the code is going to be largely the same. However, there are some places where you'll want to add authority guards, and that's the part that's going to be the key difference in this implementation of the tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over to the editor, and we're going to create a new class. This is going to be our spawn volume class. And in this case, we're just going to derive from actor because this is a fairly basic object. And this is our spawn volume. We're just going to create this class. And as usual, the editor is going to create it, recompile the code, and fire up Visual Studio and switch us over. So while we wait on that, I will also let you know that, like I said, this is going to take a few videos. I think 3 videos to get through all of it. Before the spawn volumes are ready. We'll be in a pretty good state at the end of each one. Alright, let's drop down here and take a look. Our spawn volume is with some of the actor boilerplate code set up for us, but we're going to need to do some more things to it. The first thing we need is a physical representation of the spawn area. Where in the world are these pickups going to be spawned from? And we're going to use a box component for that. That is going to be private, so we don't want anybody else to mess with it. So we're going to create that here. It's going to be a class uBox component. And we'll call that where to spawn. And this is a U property. We're going to add some U property tags here. We want this to be visible anywhere, blueprint read only. And then we're going to put it in our spawning category. Category equals spawning. And we're going to use the meta keyword allow private access equals true. Now that basically means that while this is a private member variable, this class from Blueprint in the editor, we can still see it and make changes to things about it. So this is the spawn area where pickups will be created. Now, of course, we need to be able to get at this thing. So I want to get access to it. And in that case, what we'll do for that is use a getter function. And this is going to return the class uBox component. Get where to spawn. We'll call that. And that's going to be const because it doesn't make any changes. And it's going to return where to spawn. Now, for this one, we want it to be something that that is really fast in code. So we're going to use this force inline. That keyword is going to ensure that this works really quickly because the compiler will basically replace the code with the function call with the actual code. Okay, so let's put a tag on this little note so that this tells us this returns spawn volume box component. All right, and then I think that's all we're going to need to do here. We just need to go and actually set this thing up in the constructor. So let's switch over to the spawn volume CPP file. And here we're going to also, just like Epic's tutorial, we know that we are not going to be ticking the spawn volume, so we can just set that to false. And here we're going to actually do the same process that Epic did. We're going to create this component. It's fairly standard. So where to spawn is now going to be, we're going to create default subobject. The type is uBox component. And we're going to give it some text. We'll just call it spawn volume. Okay, and we want to set this as our root component. So set root component equals where to spawn. Okay, now here is where we're going to have a big question. Do we really need this physical representation of the space, this box component created and set up on the client? Well, the answer is no. This is only relevant on the server because the server is the one that's going to need to know where this volume exists and where in space to create these things and all that. So we're going to go ahead and put an authority guard here so that there is not even a physical box component representation of this thing anywhere in the client side. So we're only going to do that on the server. So that's pretty good. And now what we need to do is, so now we've got the actual box component created. So we have this physical representation of the space. And we'll set that all up and actually create an instance of it in the level through the editor. So that takes care of the where to spawn. Now we have to do the next part, which is, okay, if I want to know where to spawn a specific battery inside of this volume, let's imagine that I have a large volume covering space. I need to pick a location within that volume to actually spawn and drop a battery from. Well, in order to do that, we're going to need another function because we want to be able to get some random point in the volume. And in fact, that's what we're going to do, is call this get random point in volume. Let's just throw it right down here. This is going to be publicly accessible, and a point in three-dimensional space is commonly referred to using a f vector. So that's what we're going to return. Get random point in volume. Doesn't take anything as an argument. This is a U function, and we want this to be blueprint pure, so we could call this from blueprint. And this is in the category spawning. Okay, and just to put our note in here, this is going to find a random point within the box component, which is our spawning area. All right, and so now we need to actually implement this. And so I'm going to use that little control period and then hit enter. See if it'll actually give me a definition automatically. Appears to be uncooperative yet again. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. Okay, so let's go back over here. We're going to create void a spawn volume. Random point in volume. Now, how are we going to accomplish this? So there's a couple of ways. One is we could figure this all out on our own. So we could, find a location within the volume. I'm just using some math, but we're going to instead use some functionality that helps us out, and we're going to do that with a Kismet math library function. In order to do that, we need to include the Kismet math library. So we're going to add include Kismet math library. We'll include that, and that will give us access to a bunch of these sort of static functions that we need. Did I name this one correctly? Get random point in volume. Oh, I called it void, didn't I? Yeah. Vector is what it returns. Okay, sorry about that. All right. So now what we're going to do is we need to get the location, the origin of the volume, and then the extents of the volume, and those will pass into this Kismet math library function. So, of course, we only want this to work when we actually have a box component, and since we're only doing that on the server, we can just do an if check to make sure that where to spawn is actually valid, because if it is, then we can go ahead and do this. So if where to spawn, we can say where, if we want to be more explicit, where to spawn is not equal null. Okay, and so what we'll do is we'll say, okay, let's find this. Let's get the spawn origin, and that's where to spawn. We get the bounds and we get the origin, and then similarly we want a vector for the extent, and that is where to spawn. We go ahead, we get the bounds again, and we get the box extent. And then finally we're just going to return this from this function, this ukismat math library. This is a static function, so we just scope it with the class name, and then it's random point in bounding box. So it's random point in bounding box. Whoops. Grabbed the wrong one there with the autocomplete. Random point in bounding box, and we pass in to that origin and extent. Okay, and then of course if there's nothing here, we're just going to return, we have to return something, so we just return the f vector, the default value, default constructor. There we go. Okay, so now we will return a random point, and we use this helper function, and this is sort of a common thread or a common practice in Unreal, is look for something that's already doing what you want to do, because it's probably there somewhere. You just have to find it, and we'll do that in a number of other cases down the road as well. Hunting down where Epic or Unreal already does this stuff. Okay, so now we've got our random point in the volume, and we have our volume set up there. So I think that is all we need to do to define where to spawn. And of course, we're going to go into the level and actually create one of these later on, but let's go ahead and compile, make sure that works, and then we will be done with this video, and then in the next video, we will actually go and set up what to spawn. So I will see you then.